I'd like to talk to you about a neat Christmas tradition we have here at Kramer's Piano Shop. It all started in 1977 with the request of a Christmas Eve delivery. Before I tell you any of the stories, I'd just like to tell you a little bit of what we do. Every Christmas, we offer free Christmas Eve deliveries. And while people are at church or shopping or sleeping throughout the night, we will sneak in pianos and surprise them the next morning when they wake up. So some of the things we do that are really neat, when my daughters were little, we took them as elves, and they would hand out candy canes, and if the people were at home, they'd play Go Tell It on the Mountain. So these are some of the things that we did, and in a few moments here, I'll share some stories with you. Our very first Christmas Eve delivery was in 1977, Christmas Day. A gentleman by the name of Lanny Harkenhorn came in the store, and he was the state's attorney for Carroll County, and wondered if we could deliver a piano to his wife for Christmas. We said, sure, we'll be glad to do that. At the time, it happened to be a reconditioned old upright called a Packard. And so while she was sleeping, early Christmas morning, my dad delivered that with me. We took it down into the room with a big ribbon on it. And then at that time, we also pulled doors shut from the wall. It was that type of a house, so it was closed in. And we left without waking her up. And he closed the doors, and he later told us that she just loved it. And I will tell you, to this day, all these years later, since 1977, we still have worked on that piano. It has since moved locations, not more than 15 miles away, but the joy it brings to a home. A piano moving I'd like to tell you about for Christmas Eve, I can only guess now how long ago it was. I believe it was the 1990s. And I used to go and eat at a Ponderosa. You probably never heard of that. It was like a Bonanza today or a steakhouse today. The owner of it, manager of it, wanted to surprise his wife with a baby grand piano. So we made the deal. It was a Kauai grand, and they were going to be gone for Christmas. He was going to have her out of the house. We were delivering it in the middle of the night. Fortunately, I had many friends from the church service at home that wanted to help because it was going to go up into a balcony. So we arrived. Now today we have on our trucks light bars and all kinds of lighting. In those days, we didn't have lighting. In fact, in those days, after 4 o'clock, there was no gas stations open to get any fuel for the truck. So you had to really plan to make it through the night. So this particular night, I think there were 6 of us to take it up a spiral type of stair. It wasn't a tight spiral. And so when we arrived, there was no outside lights. There was no sidewalk. We backed up to a bank. We used flashlights. And we had to make a sidewalk out of our planks. And the door had been left open for us, so we opened that up. It was so tight, we had to take the door off. And then we had to take all the pictures off the wall, all the staircase, because it was that tight. There wasn't enough room for us to get around the piano to take it up like 20-some steps. So we accomplished that. We put it up there in the loft. We put a ribbon on it. And we left and put the house back together. And you can imagine what the day would have been like when she came home for Christmas and found this beautiful Kauai grand piano in their balcony. Tell you a story about, again, probably the 1980s, a Christmas Eve delivery. And you might know it was an old upright piano. They are twice as heavy as a small console piano. So my brother was helping me that year. I usually had trouble getting movers on Christmas Eve, and my brother was willing to help, and he's 6 years younger than I am. And we took this upright piano down to Buckystown, Maryland area, out along the Monocacy River. And it was up in the hill above the river. And what I remember from way back then is there was no way to drive up to the cabin. It was in a cabin. We could only get halfway up the hill with at that time we had a pickup truck with a box we built on it. And again, no outdoor lights. We had to use flashlights. And so we had to, on the hillside, plank this big, 800-pound upright up the hill. I think two of the relatives were there to let us in, waiting on us. And so, and in those days, if you ran behind on Christmas Eve, there was no phones to call with either. They just had to wait till we got there. So we arrived and we started up this hillside. And if you know anything about planking, in those days I only had wood planks. Today I have plywood planks that are one piece. But those were, so they would give, they would turn, so the piano would be tippy. And so we made our way up that hillside. They held lights for us, and we were spent. I could have used an extra 1 or 2 men on that job. But what are you going to do in the middle of the night? You don't have a chance to do that. So we got it accomplished. We put it in the cabin, and for as far as I know, it was happily ever after. The next story I'm going to tell you about Christmas Eve is a true story. You'll say there's no way, but you have to know one thing about me. I'm a driven man, and I'm a committed man, and I truly felt like Santa Claus delivering pianos, and that I dare not disappoint anybody. So this particular night, I think back in the 1990s maybe, I know when it was. It was the late 1980s. We had a new tuner come across the country named Vince Merkelo from Utah. And it took him 3 months to get here because his truck kept breaking down. That's part of this story. So he arrives, and I had canceled tunings for months till he got here. He had snowstorms, and he had this old beat-up truck. So now fast forward to our moving night for Christmas Eve. We had, I think that night, not as many to deliver, but you could only put one on the truck at a time in those days, so maybe 8 to move. We were going out of Westminster toward Manchester and then to Hanover when my truck suddenly started carrying on and broke down. Basically, the rods went through the engine, meaning it could not be driven. There's no mechanics on duty. It was early evening, maybe 6:37, nothing open. And the only thing I could think of, how do we come through the rest of the night for all these pianos? So I called my brand new employee, Vince Merkelo, who still tunes pianos in Utah. And I said, Vince, any chance we could use your truck? Now, you have to understand his truck was like an old U-Haul that was shot. And it actually had fencing on it like a farm truck. And he had half his furniture still on it with tarps. And there was no lighting on the truck for the middle of the night. And there was no lift gate to get it up on that. So our work was cut out. So I called him. He says, well, my insurance is out and my tags are expired. And he said, it's up to you. And I says, well, I don't have any choice. I can't get another truck. I will do it. I'll take the chance. So he brought the truck to us, and we unloaded the one we were taking to Hanover. And we took it to Hanover, and wouldn't you know, there was only 1 minute market still open. We stopped to get a snack, came out, and the truck wouldn't start. So thankfully, someone had jumper cables. Well, I realized then at that point of the night that we'd be in trouble to finish the night. So we jumped it, we loaded that piano, delivered it, came back to reload at our store, and took a battery, because the lights kept getting dimmer. Took a battery out of one of my tuning vans, put it in this truck, and then drove another vehicle behind to see the unload since there was no lights. And we had a 10-foot ramp that was steep as could be without a lift gate. And all I can tell you is we went all night, and we finished at 7 a.m., and as we finished at 7 a.m., driving up 194 to our store, it ran out of gas. So I remembered that the only thing you can do when you run out of gas is swish the gas tank side to side. My uncle had told me this. So I started going side to side with no cars coming, of course. And wouldn't you believe I made it right to the front of our store where it stopped and wouldn't move. And that ends the story of that night.